Hey guys, welcome to the KB Talk Show. I'm Brian.
I'm Chris, and this is video number 2. We're gonna
look at some potential playoff pitchers in the NFL. We're gonna talk, just playoffs in general, and at the very end, we're gonna talk a little basketball.
then we'll wrap up with basketball. So some of the action that happened this weekend.
Oh wait, can I say something first?
Yeah, go ahead.
First off, I'd just like to say congratulations to Drew Brees for breaking Dan Marino's record. That is very impressive, honestly. That's Drew Brees is a fantastic quarterback, and yeah, I just want to.
And he's a great person to always helping with the community, especially after the hurricane incident down there.
Just want to give a shout out to Drew.
Absolutely, and beating that record after 30-something years, something like that.
Almost 30-something years.
So good for him.
He deserves
and
it.
they did win last night. So.
Yeah, they didn't win. They stalled the Falcons.
Okay, well, to the playoff picture, I guess we can start with the NFC.
NFC is almost pretty much set in stone. You've got the Packers as the number 1 seed. The San Francisco is the number 2 seed. Mm-hmm. The Saints is the 3rd seed. Now, interesting is the 4th seed is the Giants and Cowboys game this Sunday night.
Whoever wins the game
is the 4th seed.
Yeah.
Lions have clinched the 5th spot in the wild card, and I believe the Falcons are the 6th.
Last time I checked, they hadn't clinched, but
I believe
they're at a 9-6 record,
I don't think
and all the people behind them only have 8 wins. And the Falcons play Tampa Bay at home this upcoming weekend, which I think is a very probable win for them. So we can go ahead and say Atlanta gets the 6th seed.
But that Cowboy Giants game will be very interesting. Both teams have had their difficulties, but I do think they can both be playoff contenders. It's just, I mean their records. They're kind of one of those teams that are. Their records are deceiving. I know we were bashing the Cowboys last week, but honestly, they're not that bad as we. But we got kind of a little bashed. But
I think the Cowboys. It all depends on Romo.
Yeah,
because he was hurt the last game.
He's supposed to play though. I just don't know how well he'll play.
Right, and if he can work with that wrist, I think if Romo's playing and he's playing good up to the capabilities he can, then I think the Cowboys. I'm not saying they can go all the way to the Super Bowl because I don't think that's possible, but making a run in the playoffs, 1, maybe 2, I don't.
I think it's the other way around. I think it's Eli Manning and the Giants because I think the Giants are their record is very misleading because they have some like St. Pierre Paul. I mean he's amazing. Like they have some really good talent like on defense and offense. It's just they've had some miscues. Eli's had some bad days. I mean. I know Eli's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He's done it. I think they could be. I mean, they could have a shot. They're misleading.
I think, and I agree with that. Yeah, it all depends. This weekend, which team has the better quarterback, that's who's going to get that playoff spot. If Romo shows up and Eli doesn't, then the Cowboys win the division. If Eli shows up, Romo doesn't because of that arm or for whatever reason, then I think it's the Giants who make the playoffs.
Oh, sorry.
What I was going to say is Eli, yeah, he's a good quarterback. He did win a Super Bowl a couple years back, but it's just Eli's decision-making is kind of his downfall. He'll throw into risky situations. Whenever I think about Eli Manning messing up, I think to that game last season, and I know it was last season, but whenever he pitched the ball or tried to throw it or whatever with his left hand instead of his right one. And I think if he can... And of course, he can put that out of his mind. He can get rid of that because he's done it before. But if he can make right decisions, make all his throws, keep that offense intact, keep them going, then I think the Giants are the ones that make the playoffs.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that completely because honestly, out of the two teams, I do believe that the Giants are better. But it really depends because both of them are good teams. They are good when they are good. But when they're bad, they're bad. So I mean, it all depends on how they are in this week.
And I mean, like you said, we did knock the Cowboys. But if you look at it, if the Cowboys, they win this game, then they're riding a momentum. They won't have a first-round bye, so they'll be playing that very first week of the playoffs. And the Cowboys can be a very scary team. I mean, you've got all those weapons. You've got Des Bryant, who's doing great this year. Miles Austin is always good. Jason Witten.
They got that new guy, Robinson.
They do. And, I mean, with Romo, like we said, if Romo's playing good, I mean, the offense can definitely take they'd have the 4 seed, so they'd be playing the Lions. And we've already seen that game played, but
Lions won, but it's because Cowboys blew a fourth quarter lead.
That's right, and I think that would actually be a really good game to see, a Lions-Cowboys game, and this one would be in Detroit this time. So
even though we are praising the Cowboys, back to last week, I still don't think they are the Super Bowl team. I do think they can make a dent in the playoffs. I do not think they can win the Super Bowl, just because I just don't think they do.
And if it came down to, and it doesn't look like it'd be this way, but if the Falcons are the team that I see, out of all the teams that would make the playoffs, the Falcons are the ones in the NFC I see as the shakiest. They've played good this year.
They're kind of like the Cowboys and Giants.
They are. It's like their record kind of deceives them. Like Matt Ryan, he's always so good at home, but being the 6th seed, you're not going to have any home games. So that kind of scares me a little bit about the Falcons. But, I mean, overall, they're a good Roddy White. How can you ever count Matt Ryan and Roddy White out of a game? But, I mean, they'd be going up against who? They'd be playing the Saints.
The Saints.
And we just saw that game last night.
Yeah.
So, out of all the teams in the playoffs, the Packers, the Cowboys or Giants, I see the Falcons making the worst appearance in the playoffs.
Okay. Why don't we move on to the AFC picture? Right now,
We have
AFC seems pretty clear, almost, just like the NFC. You've got the Patriots. You've got the interesting with the Baltimore and Steelers, which that could be interesting how this last week goes.
right, and this last week it's going to be the Ravens are playing the Bengals this last game. And the Bengals are doing really great this year. They got Andy Dalton in.
Bengals win, they're in.
The Bengals win.
They're in. But
And
if the Bengals do win and the Ravens lost, they're going to lose.
Mhm.
They go from number 2 to number 5 because
right, and
unless Pittsburgh loses,
it all depends on how those two teams play.
Yep,
If the Ravens win, they for sure have won the division because they do have the tiebreaker over the Steelers. But if the Ravens lose, it all depends on what the Steelers do.
I mean,
Now with the Patriots, if they win, they have secured the number 1 seed.
home field advantage throughout.
Right. Now, if the Patriots lose, the Ravens win, they win the division and they get the number 1 seed. But, I mean, under those 3 teams, so we know for sure Pittsburgh and Baltimore both clinched the
We
spot.
know for sure a lot of teams that are already going to be it. We just don't know their spots because this last week means a lot for spot position.
Right. And then we also have the AFC West. We have the Broncos and the Raiders who are tied at 8 and 7.
Who is
So the tiebreaker, I think, I don't know. Would that be? I'm kind of leaning towards. I think I'm leaning towards Denver having the tiebreaker on that one. I'm not for sure.
I think, yeah.
And then Houston has clinched the AFC South, so they're for sure in. Finally making the playoffs. That's a
First time congrats to you too,
Right.
Houston. I think you finally deserve. First time in your existence, you're going to playoffs. Too bad you don't have Matt Schaub.
Yeah, but I do like the TJ Yates. I did see a story on him. And
Yeah, for a third-string quarterback, I'm impressed how well he's played. I mean, because Matt Schaub, Matt Schaub's pretty good, but I mean, TJ Yates has done pretty well for a third string. I think Houston can make some noise. It's just I don't think they can make it far because they don't have Matt Schaub.
I mean, I was thinking that, but then Thursday night's game against the Colts. I mean, it just kind of scares you. Losing to the 1 in 12 team like that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just 1 in 13, whatever it was.
2-13 now.
But he's one of those guys like Drew Brees, like what we talked about. He's a good guy. Whenever I see the Texans playing and TJ Yates is in, I'll root for him just so I can see TJ Yates win. But they'll have the number 3 seed, so they'll have home field advantage in that first game. We'll just see how the other games go. But I very well could see them winning that game.
Okay.
And going back to the West, I mean, this whole Tebow thing that's going on, I'm not a big fan of Tim Tebow, as you know. But I think I see the Broncos making the playoffs over the Raiders.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, Tim Tebow, we bashed on him last week too. I mean, he's okay. I mean, I don't think he's as great, like I said last week, as everybody says he is. But I do think the Broncos. But besides Tebow, the Broncos have a great defense. They have good players, and I do think the Broncos could make some noise. I guess it really depends on Tebow.
Yeah. What I was gonna say is it would be good to see the Raiders make it after Al Davis passed away. So I mean that's kind of something I would be rooting for. But Raiders again are one of those teams where it's just like they're kind of stumbling their way along. They're 8-7. I mean, they might finish at 500. You don't know with them.
They've had some good games and they've had some bad.
They've
games.
had some good games.
Like a lot of teams this
right,
season.
and it's
inconsistent.
I'd like to see them make it because I don't believe Tim Tebow is as good of a quarterback. And him making it, then all the Tebow fans are going to go crazy about it. But I do, in all reality, I do see the Broncos making the playoffs.
Quick, another thing. We had a viewer ask us, do we think the Lions will be a threat in the playoffs? Do we think they could make an actual run? I'm gonna say yes. I think they do have a run. I know they're the fifth seed in the wild card in the NFC, but I think they can make a run. The only thing that could cost them or could kill them is their discipline.
Right.
I've seen Detroit. They've played well, but some of those penalties that they've been committing because of their discipline, players just acting stupid, especially in Ndamukong Suh, stepping on a player 2-game suspension. I mean, that's really hurt them more than they know. And just all these not absurd, but penalties that shouldn't have happened, that could easily been prevented. That's what's really holding the Lions back. That's what I think. But if they work on that and they work on a couple of kinks here and there, I really do think the Lions could make a run because they have some good players.
Right, and the thing about the Lions is if you take Packers out of that division, if you switch them for almost anybody else in the NFC, I say the Lions win the division hands down. But it's just there was those 2 games when they did lose Ndamukong Suh because of that stupid mistake he made against the Packers on Thanksgiving. But I mean, they are, like I said, they're one of those scary teams. They're one of those teams that you don't want to play
because they can be that good, even though their record can be deceiving. Because at 10-5 right now,
right.
Yeah, they're playing the Packers the last game of the week, but they're still gonna have the 5th seed. But I do think that the Lions could be a threat.
And the defense. That's I'd say one of the best defenses in the league. Right there, you have Ndamukong Suh. You have the rookie Nick Fairley. I think he's going to get a lot better as the years go on. And then you have
the dynamic duo of Matthew Stafford and Calvin Johnson.
Oh, you can't
stop
beat
him.
Megatron.
All you gotta do is just throw it up there.
Right.
He's just like
he'll go get anything. I saw something on, I think it was the ESPN, where they were looking at the area of range he has.
Oh, I've seen that.
And he can cover like a normal sized garage. Like he's just one of those beast players where
he's one of those guys that you don't see very often.
Where if you get, I think for him, Stafford, if your guys are covered, you close your eyes, throw it in the direction of Calvin Johnson.
He's got the height and jump.
He does.
You can't beat that.
One picture that stays in my mind is that game against the Cowboys where he went up
like three
defenders. He just went up. I mean, he looked like he was 4 or 5. I know he wasn't 4 or 5 feet off the ground, but he does have the hops to get up there, get above the defenders, and he's one of those guys that can make you one of the best defenders look really dumb.
Okay. Final note on football. Who do you think wins the NFC conference?
The NFC altogether to make the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
I mean, it's really hard to pick up against the Packers right now. They did have one bad game. Like I said, everybody's going to have one or two bad games. The Packers did have one bad game. But I see now that they do have that one loss, and I guess we'll see what Mike McCarthy does. But if it was me, I would rest some of my starters. You do have there's no sense in getting him hurt this last game. Whether you're 14-2 or 15-1, you've got the same spot. That undefeated season isn't on the line anymore. You don't have that pressure. You're playing against the Lions,
who have already clinched fifth. So winning or losing, making them win or lose, it has no effect on any outcome on the
right.
playoffs.
So this game means nothing whatsoever. I guess you can believe in. I guess if they're worried about momentum, but I don't think it's going to mean anything since they get to rest that week. But I do like the Packers, whether they rest their starters or not, coming out of the NFC.
I take the Packers as well. I think the biggest threat for the Packers would be the Saints. The Saints have been on a roll, like just this really good roll. But I do think overall, even with as badly as the Packers' defense has been lately, I still do believe that they will win the NFC. For the AFC, that's kind of a tough one because they're all so close. I would have to go with either Baltimore or the Steelers. If I had to choose the Steelers, it really all depends on how healthy Ben is because he's been having some injuries lately. Baltimore with their defense, their amazing defense they've almost always had.
Right.
And their offense, Joe Flacco's improved a lot, and some of those, Torrey Smith, they're one of the new receivers. I do believe one of them, the reason I don't pick the Patriots is because obviously they've got Tom Brady and Wes Welker and Rob Gronkowski.
You can keep going with the Patriots.
But I just don't, their defense is worse than the Packers, and I just, with the Steelers and the Ravens, I don't think that they can hold up in that division.
I'd agree with you. Your first thing to say is let's go Packers, Patriots Super Bowl. But how often is it that the number one seeds make it to the Super Bowl? It's rarely ever. Last year, look at the Packers, barely made the playoffs, went all the way, played on the road every game.
Sixth seed.
But like you said, that's immediately what I thought of when I thought of the Patriots, is that 32nd ranked defense that they have. They've given up so many yards, but they're in every game. They've won most of their games because of Tom Brady. Now, if you play against a good team, and what I'm thinking the same thing as you is it's either Pittsburgh or Baltimore, who I'm picking out of the AFC. But to me, I think it's whoever ends up winning the division and gets that first round bye. Yeah. Especially if the Steelers do not get that bye, I do not see them going far in the playoffs at all. Because Ben Roethlisberger needs the rest. He needs to stay off that leg. We did see Charlie Batch. He won, but they played the Rams. So, it's just one of those things where you need the rest. These are two teams where you need the rest. All those, Ray Lewis has been out this season. It's just those older guys.
Key players.
Where you need them. So, to me, I think how I see it going down this week, because the Ravens play the Bengals and the Steelers play the Browns. And I see both of those teams winning, so it would be Ravens playing, they would get the first round bye. And this is going to come off really weird because these are our two teams.
Yeah.
Which is going to sound biased, but if you look at it, everything says that it's going to be a Packers-Ravens Super Bowl. And I honestly, all bias aside, I think that the Ravens are going to be the ones to come out of the AFC because they do have that rest time. And the only thing that has killed them in the playoffs, the Ravens have beaten the Patriots in the playoffs.
It's just they've never had home field.
They've had a tough time against the Steelers, but I think Ben on that hurt knee, it is hard to beat a team 3 times in a season. The Eagles did it against the Cowboys, am I right? Mm-hmm. Or was it the Cowboys against the Eagles? Uh-huh. Something like that. But if Ben is hurt, that his leg is hurt, then I think the Ravens can overcome them. I don't think there's anyone in the AFC other than the Patriots and the Steelers who really would match up against the Ravens. So I think it is a Packers-Ravens Super Bowl coming out.
Who wins Super Bowl? Just give me a pick, no explanation. Who do you
I-
think wins?
Packers.
I'm gonna go with Packers too. All right, we're gonna end our show on some basketball. Christmas was just, or the Christmas Day lineup was just a couple days ago, and some quick thoughts. I think the reigning champion Mavericks were horrendous. They're not the same team they were last year.
Right.
They've lost they lost Tyson Chandler, they've lost JJ Barrera. It's like a whole other team. I mean, they got Vince Carter, they got Delonte West, they picked up Lamar Odom.
Right.
I'm not saying they're a bad team. I'm saying it's like the Heat last year, how they started out. The Heat, Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, and LeBron James, they're so good. But at first, at the beginning of the season, they weren't that great. It's just because they've got to work together. I mean, they got to learn to flow together. I'm not saying the Mavericks are going to be as good as that. No. I'm saying that I think after this horrendous last couple games, because the Denver last night, they got killed again. I mean, it's only 2 games in the season, but I think after they play for a little bit, they will work things out. But the only problem is I think it won't be, I don't think it won't have enough time because of this shortened NBA season. But, see how things go.
Right. I was looking at the same thing, watching the game. I mean, the Mavericks, they just look sloppy. That's the one word. If you told me to describe the game in one word for the Mavericks, I would say sloppy. But it's because they do have those new guys trying to integrate them. Vince Carter looked like he normally doesn't at the beginning of the game. He had a couple fouls early. He wasn't making his shots. And then with Lamar Odom getting ejected on what I didn't think was a really good technical call. But yeah, it's like the Heat last year. They're trying to integrate all these guys coming in. They lost, like you said, and they also lost Peja Stojakovic, who you didn't think was that good, but he did make some key threes in the finals.
He did.
I think losing those guys and trying to integrate some of these guys, Lamar Odom, Vince Carter, guys like that, names where it's not that easy to just give them a playbook, go through a couple practices, which you did have shorter practices from whenever the CBA got reached. And then another thing is, what you mentioned before the show, is how old this team is. And, I mean, you've got Dirk up there, Kidd. We don't even have to mention how old Kidd is.
Vince Carter, he's old. Lamar, he's 32.
They're all in their 30s. They're all getting up there. And, like you said, a shortened season. We lost a month of almost 2 months of the season, but they only cut off 16 games. So, games are being shoved together more. Like, I think it's the Lakers. They have 3 games in a row, back to back to back. That wasn't something you would have seen if this CBA was reached before the season started. Mm-hmm. So for an older Mavericks team, it's going to be harder for them to become adjusted, especially with this shortened schedule, everything squished together. But another point, the Heat looked on point, especially after that game.
The Heat looked, I don't even know, they looked like the NBA champions. I mean, they look like they could go all the way and win it.
Watching that game, if you were in a coma and you woke up and somebody told you to watch this game, say, here are the 2 teams from last year, and said, pick which one won last year, you would pick the Heat.
There's no way you would believe the Mavericks would won.
The Heat basically beat the Mavericks down. The Mavs got close at the end, but during the whole game, the Heat were up 20 points, 35 points was their most. But, that looks like the team to beat this year.
Oh, it definitely is, in my opinion. Now that you've got LeBron and Dwayne and Bosh all working together,
right,
with Shane Battier added to the lineup, and Chalmers has gotten better, and Udonis Haslem.
Right.
They've all, after last year, you put them all together, they almost had this year. I think they've got almost all the kinks and bugs worked out, like a smooth. I think they can win.
It's like you got James Jones who kept knocking down threes in that game. You have every piece you need for a good basketball team. And one thing I remember from last year was kind of the dissent between the players and the coach. Now, if the coach, now it was only one game, But I think if the coach can keep control of these guys, say, hey guys, look at that first game. We basically got revenge against who beat us last year. If we can stay focused, then we can win it, and I believe they can. And then there's all this other stuff going on. I mean, with the Lakers, Kobe's hurt. He's playing, though. They lost.
By 1 point to D. Rose and the Bulls.
They lost Odom. I mean, I don't think the Lakers really have much of a shot this year just because of the personnel issues. I mean, what happened with Odom is Odom's name was mentioned in the Chris Paul trade.
Yep, and he was like, whoa, guys. He got very peed off, as you could say. And that's really what caused him to be traded, because he's like, I don't want to play with y'all if you're all going to be trying to deal me behind my back.
Right.
And so he went to the Mavericks for like $9 million in like a trade or a draft pick.
Right.
For almost nothing.
And, I mean, some of the other teams, I mean, the Clippers are looking good with Chris Paul.
And Blake Griffin.
I mean...
And, Chauncey Billups, don't forget.
Chauncey Billups is down there now. And then in Chicago, I mean, Chicago is a good team, too.
And they got pretty much the same team from last year, but they did add Rip Hamilton. I do think even in his age, as he's getting older, I still think he can make a difference. And I do believe, because if you look at some of the, I mean, I know they beat the Lakers, but if you look at some of the preseason games, D. Rose and Rip were just like on cue. Like every time, it was just like it was pretty.
And then you have Luol Deng up there too. I mean, and you got to think how old is Derrick Rose? He's like 22.
He's
something
young.
He is young. I mean, he's still got years and years to work with.
I mean, yeah, because he just signed a 5-year contract with the Bulls. He's got plenty of time.
So I mean, and that's the thing that I mean if the Bulls were in the Western Conference, I would go ahead and say, as of looking at these first 2 games, I would say it's a Bulls Heat final. But they're both in the Eastern Conference, so that's going to be something to watch. See how those two teams, how they battle it out over there.
We don't want to get ahead of ourselves.
That's right.
Only 2 games.
2 games in, and what I was going to say is no reason to overreact for the Mavericks. I mean, 2 games down, they were bad game. They were really bad games, but I would say assess them after 10 games. That's you're about a 7th of the season in. I would say if the Mavericks, if they're looking bad then it's not going to be good for them for the rest of the season.
But yeah, I mean, those are just a couple of our early season predictions or comments. Obviously, we're 1 games in for some team. Season just started, so I mean, we'll have plenty more to talk about later on as the season goes. But for now, I mean, is that all you got?
I think that's it. Next, I guess we'll have the NFL playoff picture all wrapped up. We can start getting in that. We'll bring you our playoff brackets and see if our thoughts have changed on who makes the Super Bowl, who wins. Then we'll definitely have more basketball. We'll have a better assessment of teams like that.
And we'll start talking about baseball as we get closer to the season, because right now it's just been some trades and stuff. But we will start talking about baseball. I don't know how far along or when we will, but we will. But I know for sure we will talk about basketball and football next episode. So
just stay tuned. We'll probably be back out next week. I think we're probably looking at Tuesday.
Maybe we might throw in a couple more shows here and there, but you know, we have a Facebook page and a Twitter, KB Talk Show. Like us, follow us. We're on both of those. Oh, and subscribe to our channel.
Right, and we have the links on our page for the Facebook and the Twitter.
They should be on our YouTube channel. So
And then that's right. Make sure you subscribe. We'll have videos coming out more regularly. Sorry for the wait this past week.
We did improve on our camera and audio quality a lot from last week, so I hope it's better than well, it should be better, but I hope you liked this one better than last week's.
Right. So thank you for watching,
and we'll see you the next episode.
See you next week.